In this video, we explore the unsettling and upsetting subject of self-harming. To discover that your child is self-harming can come as a terrible shock, and visual signs of injury can be particularly distressing. What is self-harm? Well, self-harm refers to acts of deliberate self-injury, such as cutting or burning or hitting oneself, pulling hair, picking skin, or even taking overdoses. The most common form of self-injury is to cut the arms or back of the legs with a knife or razor blade. Now, as shocking and distressing as it might appear, self-harm is rarely a suicide attempt, although people who self-harm can be at higher risk of suicide, accidental or intentional. It is also not just attention-seeking behaviour, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your child has a mental illness. It indicates that your young person is experiencing difficult feelings that they are trying to cope with on their own. Why is it considered to be a coping mechanism? Well, people cope with difficulties in their lives in different ways. Self-harm in its broadest sense can include behaviours that we ourselves as parents or adults or guardians engage in anyway, whilst being aware that they are not particularly healthy behaviours, like smoking or drinking alcohol. Some young people use self-harm to cope with negative feelings that are becoming overwhelming for them. It can act almost like a relief valve for bottled up, difficult emotions such as anger, guilt, and desperation. Some young people report that it makes them feel more in control when they otherwise feel hopeless. So if a young person is feeling guilt or shame, the self-harm can act as a form of self-punishment as well. And young people who have been abused sometimes find that self-injury counteracts the numbness and detachment that they feel in their bodies since the traumatic events. It sort of helps them, or they report by saying it helps them to feel something initially. And self-harming can provide a feeling of instant relief for these people. However, over time, it can become an automatic response, whilst the underlying issues actually remain unchanged. So here's a question. What can I, as a parent or guardian, do? Well, it goes without saying that your child will require a great deal of support and understanding at this time. They might find it really hard to talk about their self-harming. Perhaps they will worry that you will be angry or upset with them. They may feel ashamed and embarrassed about their behaviour. They might not even understand their behaviour themselves, which will make it harder for them to explain it to you. If a young person has been self-harming for a long time, they may find it hard to change this pattern of behaviour because it has now also become a habit. It might not be realistic to assume that stopping will be easy for them. The issues underlying the self-harm will be there still and will need to be addressed. So as a parent, you might find broaching this subject with your child particularly difficult because you will have your own emotions and feelings to cope with as you see your child suffering. There are things that you can do though. First of all, a good starting place is your local doctor. Visit your family doctor. They can give advice on what to do if your child's cuts gets infected. They also might make a referral to a local mental health service for your child. If your child's cuts do not require hospital treatment, provide you with clean dressings. That's something that your family doctor might do for you. But you can also consider specialist services such as private clinics, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, or a counsellor. And quite often, counsellors at school are well trained and deal with these issues very well. So it might be worth involving your school counsellor. Also, be a good listener. Encourage them to discuss their worries with you. Try to be sympathetic and understanding. You're the parent. You don't have to be a friend, just be the parent. Discuss the problems that lie behind the self-harming with your child, rather than focusing on the self-harming behaviour itself. Research suggests that if your child or young person is abusing medicine, then buy them in blister packs. Don't have bottles around, because the actual slowness of removing them from the blister packs gives the child time to think, and sometimes that's just all they need. However, be aware that hiding objects such as razors, knives, medication, or items considered harmful will not stop somebody intent on harming themselves. Finally, look after yourself. It can be very draining to support somebody with self-harming issues. Being aware of your own emotions and taking time to relax and offload is really valuable. Remember that your child is still your child, and that a self-harming behaviour is only a small aspect of them. It doesn't make the whole person.